If you took everything that high ticket sales trainers teach and just did the exact opposite, you'd make way more money. The forced rapport building, the copy and paste framing and analogies, and the overly emotional closing techniques, your prospects see directly through it, and it's the reason why your close rate is suffering. I figured this out the hard way when I was thrown into the deep end selling on Tai Lopez at 20 years old, and I struggled because I was implementing a lot of the things that I just mentioned. And Tai gave me one piece of advice which I implemented, and it actually completely changed my entire sales approach. Is the reason why I was able to clear 100 grand my first month selling for Tai and go on to clear $600,000 in total sales selling for him on this particular mastermind offer that we're going to be talking about in this video. Before we get into all the sales sauce and the techniques and the exact things that I did to be able to collect $25,000 on single 20 to 30 minute sales calls, let me give you a little bit of context in terms of what the offer actually was and who we were speaking to. That way everything else makes sense. So when I first started selling on Tai, he had just come off like a year and a half of being off social media completely. So he was coming back, and he was coming back very strong. He had scheduled monthly masterminds every single month for about a year straight in different cities all over the world. It was in Miami, Stockholm, and on his farm, London, everywhere, right? And these masterminds, the way we were doing it is an individual mastermind was 5K, but then we had packages that were 10K, 25K, 50K, and even $100,000 with packages for multiple events and additional access to Tai and getting direct coaching from him. The people who were coming in for this offer, these were business owners. These were legit people who were making serious money, 6, 7, 8. I spoke to an individual who had just come off of a 9-figure exit, who was looking to come into one of these masterminds. It was a completely different conversation as to what I was doing previously. Before this, I was selling a lot of like B2C, biz op, teaching like 9-to-5ers how to make money online, basically, right? I'd sold a couple million doing that, but this was completely different. And I needed to be able to shift my approach very quickly to be able to be successful, right? And you might be hearing all this and thinking like, wow, this is a dream opportunity. It's probably super easy, really easy to make money, make sales, etc. And yes, there was a lot of things that were working in my favor, obviously. But with that said, there was a lot of pressure on me. We had a lot of organic coming in. We were also spending a lot of money on paid ads at the time. I was one of the first closers that was on the sales team that was pushing this offer. Again, I'm coming from a completely different sales background, and there was a lot of pressure on me to perform. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about the exact shifts that I made that allowed me to perform and ultimately do a few $100,000 selling this offer in my first few months. Number one, the first thing that you need to understand, and this is something that I train all of my sales guys on, right? You need to have a deep understanding of buyer psychology, okay? There's two types of buyers. There's a move away buyer, and then there's a move towards buyer, right? People are motivated by moving away from pain or motivated by moving towards pleasure, right? So what I was doing previously was a lot of move away, right? Where I'm getting my prospect to open up about their pain, getting them to be vulnerable, bringing that pain to the surface, getting them to feel it. That way they have an internal urgency to take action on it when I give them an offer at the end of the call. These kinds of buyers that I was speaking to, they were moving away from pain. They were already set. They were making millions of dollars a year. They were successful. They had freedom, but they were motivated by getting to the next level. They were motivated by the game itself, right? So the fundamental shift in my overall sales approach was two things, okay? Number one, with a move towards buyer, what you need to understand is that they're very logical. They have a problem that they have within their business, and if you can give them a solution to them and you can articulate it properly and it clicks in their mind, they're going to take action on it. And there's not going to be a lot of deliberation and thinking about it and limiting beliefs. There's going to be none of that. It's going to be very simple to close the deal when you're able to make that connection. Not only is it about making the connection, but it's also about raising their belief that it's actually the right move for them, right? Because they have so many different options. They have so many different things that they could do to solve the problem. Why is your specific solution the one that's 100% going to solve the problem? And we're going to be talking about both of those things in this video. The first adjustment that I made, it was very simple, but honestly had a massive impact and changed every single sales call that I've taken since I've gotten this piece of feedback. So my first few weeks selling on the offer, the way I would start out the conversation, basic agenda, and then, okay, great. So just tell me a little bit more about your business. Some people, they would open up and they would, yeah, here's what's going on with my business, blah, blah, blah. This is why I'm looking to come out to the event. This is what I'm struggling with right now. And they give me the response that I want. But there would be a whole different group of people who would just answer my question directly. They just tell me about their business. Yeah, so this is what I do. I've been in the game for this many years. And then I'm like, okay, nice. How do you like it? Yeah, it's fine, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, cool, nice. So, and then now I'm getting into this interview mode, which I do not want to be in. It's weird, it's awkward, no rapport is really being built, and the rest of the call is just an uphill battle. And a lot of times I just thought this was part of sales, right? But, fundamentally the problem was again, I was starting out with this interview-based questioning. I had no authority, had no control, and I couldn't direct the conversation where I wanted it to go. So what happened was, as Tai listened to one of my calls, he sends a 5-minute voice note into the group chat, just ripping it apart. And one of the main pieces of feedback was that opening question, right? And the analogy that he used is like, if you're a soldier, right, and you're in a trench, you're in World War II, you're not just gonna pop up out of that trench and start blasting people, right? You're gonna analyze your surroundings, you're gonna peek out of the trench, you're gonna see, all right, where's the enemy at? All right, like what's in front of me? What are the different obstacles? What are the different routes that I can take here? What's gonna be the best move, right? You analyze and you collect information before you actually, take a stance, right? Now, what I was doing on this call, I was just popping out of the trench and I was blasting people, right? I was going straight into what I wanted to do, right? But the problem was I wasn't actually understanding what I was working with before I did that. So the way that we shifted that opening question was exactly this, okay? Finish up the agenda, great. So why don't you just kick things off with a little bit of background on yourself and what you were hoping to gain from the mastermind, and I'll see if we can help, right? There's a couple things going on there, very subtle, but they're very important. Number one, notice how it's not a question, it's a statement. That subtly, it creates a sense of authority, right? Where I'm running the call, I'm taking control, even though I'm talking to someone who's like 10 times more successful than me, if not more, I'm taking control and I'm taking the frame at the start of the call, right? Number two, although I'm taking control and I'm taking the frame, I'm not trying to like alpha anybody, right? I'm very calm, I'm very collected. And a lot of the times I will speak slower through that agenda or through that opening question. I will intentionally stutter and pause. I'll have this calm tone of voice because I want to drop my prospect's guard. That way, the rest of the call, they're opening up, they're comfortable with me, they're not getting a weird salesy vibe from me. Okay, and the third thing is, if you notice with that question, I'm not asking for anything specific. I'm basically giving my prospect permission to go on like a 2-minute spiel where they can catch me up to speed on everything that's going on with them right now and the most relevant information in relation to the mastermind and why they actually apply. So some people would open up about their business and the problems that they're facing. Some people would open up about the next, section of their business that they want to pursue and they want to open up. Some people will talk about the value that they've gotten from Tai already and, maybe what they're looking to gain from the mastermind. So I'll get all kinds of different responses. And this would allow me to basically sit down for 2 minutes. I'm just hear my prospect talk at the start of my call. I'm taking down notes. I'm collecting information. I'm analyzing them too. I'm analyzing, okay, is this person like super egotistical? Are they more humble? Okay, like what's top of mind to them? What's important to them, right? And then based on all that information from that first statement, that would change my approach for the rest of the sales call, right? And most people just kind of follow the exact same process on sales calls over and over because, from a sales training standpoint, it's the easiest thing to just tell someone, hey, just read this script, ask these questions, right? But it's the exact reason why you have no control over the outcomes of your calls, right? Because you can't adjust and tailor your approach to the person that you're actually speaking to. So that was the first change I made, okay? The second change that I made, remember we spoke about with a move towards kind of prospect, somebody who's already successful and they're trying to figure out how to become more successful. The first thing that we want to do is create just a very basic problem solution bridge, right? We want to figure out exactly what their problem actually is, right? We want to figure out what they've tried so far, why it hasn't worked out. We want to get into the specifics there. And then two, we want to explain and articulate exactly how our offer, and in this case, the mastermind, was going to solve that problem directly. Okay, so the first step in that is actually understanding what the problem actually is. Now, here's the problem with understanding the problem is that, especially when you're talking to more successful people, they're not just going to hop on a call and then just start like venting to you. Some cases they will, but a lot of cases they won't, right? They're not going to talk about the real shit that they're actually struggling with because it's kind of an ego thing, right? Like, I don't want to hop on a call, talk to the stranger, and then immediately show myself as somebody who's weak. Really common with these kinds of prospects, right? What got them to where they are is this character trait. So here's how I would combat that. So as opposed to like, gotcha. So, you said you guys have been kind of struggling with scaling and things have been inconsistent. Like, how's that been on you personally? Or questions like when you're in vision, okay, gotcha. So like after you get to that goal, like how does that change things for you? Like what would that really look like? Right? Like those questions would be bangers when you're talking to B2C people. But when you're talking to this kind of person, like they're just going to completely shut down because they can sense that you're trying to emotionally manipulate them. Like they know exactly what you're doing. And the moment that they get that impression, a lot of times you're just going to lose the sale right then and there, right? So you cannot take that approach at all. Even when it comes to challenge, right? The approach that you would take with, your average high ticket sales call is, hey, so like what's been stopping you from solving this problem already? Yeah, I just haven't really had the time. Right? They'll give an excuse like that. And then you'll reframe that excuse to a limiting belief, right? Where it's, okay, gotcha. And, when it comes to time, like we're all busy, right? And it's not, I don't really think it's about finding time. It's about making time, right? Is there any reason why, in the last year you haven't been able to make this a priority? Yeah, I guess like I just haven't been taking it super seriously. And I guess I've kind of been comfortable with where I'm comfortable. What do you mean? yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then we kind of get into this conversation and then we figure out what their limiting belief is. We give them a coaching moment, help them move past it and help them go and make their transformation. That's not gonna work, again, with someone who's already successful, right? But with that said, how do we really dig deep on what their problem was? How do we create a little bit of tension to figure out why they haven't actually solved it and challenge them to step up and do something about it right now without setting them off and giving them a salesy vibe and triggering their ego, right? Let me tell you exactly how I did this. So I used to get people they would be really vague in this section of a call, right? So like, dude, like what's been stopping you from solving this? Oh, like nothing really, it just hasn't really been that important to me, and then I'll be like, okay, gotcha. But like now it is? Yeah, now it is. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I would move on and then we'll get some think about it, smoke screen at the end of the call, right? So at a certain point, I just saw the pattern, right? Where I'm like, okay, cool. If they don't get specific about what their challenge and what their problem actually is, if we can't confront that directly, they're gonna give me a smoke screen at the end of the call. They're not gonna close. So like what happened is I actually just started getting lazy on the call where I would be like, okay, gotcha. So like it wasn't important before, but now it is. Okay. I mean, I guess I'm just struggling to understand, man. I mean, like you're running this business, you guys are crushing it. Like you have, time, location freedom. You've positioned it in a way where you don't have to be working in the business all the time. I mean, like, dude, like why do you want to add this additional headache to your plate right now? Yeah, well, it's a big opportunity. The market's going that way and it seems really interesting. No, yeah, for sure. I mean, I get that, but like, is it something that like you need to do? Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, man, like, I've been working within my business now forever and like just being real, like I hate it. Like I don't like running it anymore and I'm planning on actually exiting it completely. But for me to do that, like I want to be able to build something else on the side. So this is, in preparation for that. Oh, okay, gotcha. Like when you say you hate it, like what are you talking about? I would take this approach where I would, and I started doing this out of laziness until I realized how powerful of a sales strategy it actually is, where you basically bias towards why it's not really that important to them, right? Like you take the side of like, yo, like you don't need to do this. Like, why is it even so important to you, right? And then this gives them permission because I have affirmed that, hey, you're winning, you're successful, everything is great. Because I've shown them that I understand that side of it, they don't feel the need to like continue to keep up that identity. Now they can actually be real with me and tell me what their real problem actually is. So that's how we go about finding their problem, okay? And one other note that I would mention here, which was really key with this offer, was I spent a lot of time like listening to business podcasts because I wanted to understand how is an entrepreneur think, right? What is important to them that's different from the average person, right? I would listen to the types of questions that like these podcasters would ask these business owners, and I would see like what's common between all of them. And I think that was really helpful for me just in terms of having a higher level, more sophisticated conversation with a multi-millionaire. That's another tip for you, right? If you're new to the game and like you want to close higher level people, like you need to kind of take the long route in the sense of, you need to study them. You need to learn how successful people actually operate. Now, once we've actually found the problem, right, the next step to that is connecting what it is that we offer to their problem. Right now, here was a challenge that we kind of faced with the mastermind is that, let's say like if you're selling like a coaching program on paid advertising, for example, like it's very specific what this coaching program with the problem that it solves. And it's very specific the outcome that program is going to get this person. But the mastermind, like it's pretty generic, right? It's like, hey, like we have this event at this location and at this time, come out and we'll solve all your problems. Like for every individual who would come out to that event, they would get a different piece of value from it, right? So it's like, how do I show this person that this event is going to be worth them flying to the other side of the world, taking all this time to actually be there, right? I would use a lot of story. Okay, facts tell, stories sell. I could say, hey, yes, at the mastermind, like we do tons of, training on social media, personal brand and building out coaching, for example, right? But like, that's kind of a band-aid, right? That doesn't show somebody like really the outcome that they want to get, right? So what I would do a lot of, and basically on every call, like as I was taking these conversations, I collected like this library of different business owners who had come out to events in the past and where they were at previously and where they're at now. And all the time I'll be relating it. So like, let's say for example, because we had a lot of this, we had a lot of business owners who would come in who were in a traditional business, but they wanted to get into like coaching. They wanted to teach people how to run a similar business, right? Because Tai is like the #1 guru, right? And you would go to one of his events to figure that out. So something that I would say is like, okay, gotcha. So you're in real estate right now, you're looking to build up a coaching business. It's interesting that you say that. We actually had this one guy who he started coming out to our events like a year and a half ago. His name was Joe. He was actually running a construction business. So kind of similar, a little bit different. But like in his case, like he was so new to the online coaching world. He had never done it before, but he had massive success in his own business, right? So it's like, he came out to a few events. He made a couple connections actually within the group. And long story short, like within 6 months, he launched his own coaching offer. He knew nothing about social media, X, Y, and Z, but he was able to do X, Y, Z a month within 6 months of starting simply because he had the results to back it up. And then the strategies that he learned at the event allowed him to turn that into a multi-six-figure a month business, right? So it seems like you're kind of looking to do something similar, is that right? And then instantly, now my prospect can put themselves into that person's shoes, see the result, and they're like, yeah, holy shit, I want to see the same result. I need to take the same actions, right? I would use a lot of story before the pitch to properly frame the event where, when I'm pitching the event, I'm basically just like, yeah, here's what it is, here's when it is, can you make it out? Okay, great, here's how much it's gonna cost, right? It was a very easy close at that point when I was able to figure out what their problem actually was and then tell them a story which would connect our mastermind to solving their problem. Now listen, I'm not gonna act like I figured all of this out immediately. Like a lot of this came through trial and error and being really intentional to my growth. So let me tell you exactly what I did, because honestly, and this is something I've always done throughout my career, but I remember especially on Tai, there was a lot of pressure on me to perform, and it was really important to me that I made the most out of this opportunity. So something that I did, which is really simple, which anybody in sales, you guys can implement this right away. I guarantee you're gonna make more money because of it. And again, nobody does it. I created a dashboard where every single day I would note down every single conversation that I had. Right? And now listen, I would talk to a lot of tire kickers, people wasting time, people who weren't qualified, etc. Right? Still, I would write their names down and I would gray them out. Right? But every day I would have maybe 1 to 3 quality conversations with people who absolutely should have closed. And in some cases, I didn't close them, right? It was really important to analyze exactly why they didn't close and to make an adjustment for the next day. Because the worst thing is when you have a super busy day, you go super hard, you don't get the result that you want, and then you go into the day just hoping that tomorrow is better. You cannot do that. And I used to do that, and that would drive me crazy, right? Because I didn't have control over my result, right? So what I did is I would mark down who are the 2 people today who could have been closed but weren't for whatever reason. I would write down what their objection was, but here's the important part, and here's the shift that you need to make when it comes down to analyzing your calls. Let's say 2 people, they told me that they wanted to think about it. Right? Yeah, listen, let me just think about it. Let me look at my schedule, see if I can make it out, and I'll get back to you and let you know. Right? I would determine the source of any objection comes from 3 things. Either 1, they didn't trust you. Either 2, they didn't believe in the solution was going to get them to the result that they want. Or 3, the urgency wasn't there, right? They didn't feel the need to take action on their problem immediately, right? The source of every objection is going to be one of those 3 things. If those 3 things are present on a call, belief, urgency, trust, you're closing the deal, right? So it wouldn't just be, okay, cool, think about it. How do I handle the think about it? I would always be thinking preventative. How do I be proactive, right? Because it's a lot easier to prevent an objection than it is to overcome one, right? So let's say these 2 people, it was an urgency-based thing, right? They just didn't feel a lot of urgency to take action on it. The problem wasn't important to them. So, it was yeah, listen, I'll think about it and I'll let you know. Okay, great. What I would do is I would take that information. Number 1, by doing that and just highlighting the 2 people out of the 10 conversations that you had all day, I would just ignore every other call. I would only focus on those 2, right? This allows me to get really specific about the adjustment that I can make now, right? Because if tomorrow I get the same kind of prospect, I need to do something differently so that I have a higher likelihood to actually close that deal. So I would highlight those 2 people, and then at the start of my day, the next day, I would write down an actionable of something that I would do differently on the call to close that individual, right? So if it's an urgency thing, what I would do is I would probably repeat back to them a lot more of their pain, right? I would repeat back and show that I understand what their pain actually is, right? They tell me what their pain is. Yeah, I'm struggling with this and it's kind of annoying and I just want to get my time back. Okay, gotcha. So because of this, you're not really able to have the kind of time that you want to have. And that's kind of affecting your family life. Am I understanding correctly? Yeah, exactly. And also here's an extra detail about that pain. Right? Something that simple where we just, repeat back our prospect's pain to them, show understanding about it, and just make it present and make it known. So I highly recommend, again, most people just don't do this. Create a spreadsheet, highlight the exact prospects that were missed opportunities, figure out what the actionable, right? What was the step? What was the thing that you could have done on the call that would have made it more likely that you would have closed them that you wish you did the first time? Figure out what that thing was, and then tomorrow, make sure that you do it. That way, if you lose a $100,000 sale and you lose a $10,000 commission, it's that sucks. But because of the lesson that you learned making that mistake, you're gonna make a lot more than $10,000 going into the future if you're intentional about what you did. And this is something that I developed and I was on this offer. And it's something that now I encourage every single closer that I work with to build out for themselves. Now, before we wrap this video up, let me tell you a little bit of a story, because this was a cool moment on this offer and it kind of just brings everything together and shows you what's kind of possible when you really internalize exactly who you're speaking to and you can adjust your approach effectively. So we had a day when we brought on like 10 closers. They all came out to our office up in Toronto. It was like their first day and they were doing some shadowing, right? So I had 5 closers with me in my office and I'm like, all right, like listen, like my morning is kind of open. Let me hop on the outbound list and let's make some calls and let's see what happens. I call this one individual. I can tell he's driving. He's kind of quiet. He's, hey, who's this? Okay, all right, we're from Ty's team. Okay, nice. Yeah, I have a couple of minutes, right? Kind of contained. I find out later he was just kind of an awkward guy. It wasn't really a lot of sales resistance. Like 2 minutes into the call, I'm talking to this guy. All these closers are around me. They're taking down notes. He's like, yeah, I run a construction business. I do like 11, 12 million a year. Yeah, and I had a friend who came out to one of your guys' events a little while ago and, it seemed pretty interesting. So I thought I'd take a look. And the way he's speaking, like he was so nonchalant about it. In my head, I was like, holy shit, like we got a whale on the phone. Everybody else is just like listening as if it's nothing because it's the first time they're hearing a sales call. I'm like, okay, cool. I can tell, again, this person, someone who's done that type of revenue, is making that kind of money. They can come to decisions quickly. I don't need to spend 45 minutes going deep into everything and explaining what we do. I just need to figure out exactly what does he want out of the mastermind specifically, and then how can I tie that back to the event itself? He already has a friend who's came out who said good things, right? Massive green flag. I just need to make sure that I don't fuck up the call. I go through the conversation. I think it was like a 15-minute call. By the way, I analyzed this call live and I posted it on my YouTube. I'll link it here above. Within 15 minutes, I find out what he wanted, right? Which was basically to remove himself from the business. He was fed up of working in the construction business, although he was doing well. And he wanted to put his money to work so that he can essentially retire. He wanted to figure out what other entrepreneurs are doing. And he also needed a couple like hires to make within the business to properly replace himself. I'm like, cool, 2 things. Other people have come out to these masterminds before for that exact reason. I give them a breakdown of what those people did. I explain what the mastermind actually is. I let him know it's gonna be $25,000. He's like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm just driving right now. Yeah, just give me an hour. Where should I send the money? I'm like, cool, yeah, no problem. I'll shoot you over the wire information. We'll go ahead and get started. And then everyone around me and the call, everyone around me is like, holy shit, like what the hell just happened? Within 15 minutes, I just called this guy up in the middle of his day and he's ready to pay 25K. And that was another thing that I realized about this offer is, especially when you start selling to more sophisticated people, you realize that they're quick decision makers and they're gonna move fast with their money. Like there was this other guy who I spoke to. He was running a pretty massive marketing agency and whatever, we go through the call, 25K. He's like, yeah, listen, I can do like 8,000 right now. Then I can do 17,000 tomorrow. I'm gonna be on a flight tomorrow morning. Just take my card information and just run it for 17 grand at 8 a.m. and it should be good to go. And I remember like, this was so crazy to me because I had spent like 2 years like battling with these prospects, objection handling. I'd be on the call with them for an hour to like collect $1,000 from them, right? Meanwhile, these people are like so nonchalant about just slapping down tens of thousands of dollars, right? But it really just goes to show, I mean, number one is when you can develop the skill sets and prep yourself for an opportunity like this. Number two, when you position yourself with the right people around you who can get you access to these kinds of offers. And now all of a sudden, the skills that you learn, when you apply them to a higher leverage opportunity where you're talking to wealthier people selling more expensive stuff, you can make so much more money and it actually becomes so much easier. I want to be clear because everything that I spoke about in this video, all these strategies, every single one of them is absolutely applicable to any offer that you sell on. The key here is that, before I started selling on this offer, I had spent years going over this framework and really internalizing high ticket sales call, where at a certain point, the way that I operate on a sales call is exactly the way that I speak and I have a conversation in real life. There's no lack of authenticity, right? I can hop on a call and without even thinking, execute every step of a high ticket sales framework perfectly, while also, and this is the important part, is adjusting my approach based on the person that I'm actually speaking with, analyzing what their buyer type is, their psychology is like, and making adjustments. That way I can actually guarantee that I close a deal. And before I even pitch, I know for a fact that they're gonna buy, as opposed to just hoping that they're gonna buy. This is something that, you really need to, number one, I mean, this takes a lot of repetition. Number two, like this is something you need to be intentional about, where you need to constantly be thinking about how can I improve? How can I adjust my approach when I run into different scenarios? And when you do this, you're able to create these kinds of results and you're able to make a lot of money in this space. The good news is that most people in our industry, in the high ticket space, they don't even treat this like a real job. They think it's one of these, business models online that they don't need to take seriously, and they don't treat it with the level of respect that it requires to really get the massive massive results. If you just outwork, outlast, and out-improve the average individual in this space, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year is a very straightforward process. Okay, and by the way, if you want guidance, if you want help with this, I work with closers one-on-one and in a very small group setting, helping them train, develop the skills, find roles, and then number 3, maximize their commissions when they're actually on those roles so that they can go and do the same. If you'd like to be a part of that, the link is going to be down below. That's all for today's video, guys. I hope you got value, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.